I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. Welcome once again to another Bigfoot Campfire Story. When a man and his brother decide to investigate some strange encounters on their neighbor's farm, they never expected the myth to come to life. Let's hear their story. Millie and Tom lived a couple of farms over from us. I'd caught up with Tom at the farmer's market. He wasn't looking so good. I asked him what was going on, and he said in all of his years he had never been kept up at night by the animals until this last week. Tom had found one of his goats killed near the tree line, and his liver and organs had been taken away. Something left the rest of the carcass right there. Tom, not to let anything go to waste, brought the goat back to his barn to butcher and put in the freezer. He had hung the goat by the hind legs on the door of the barn by some heavy rope and went inside to get his butchering knives. When he came back, the goat was all but gone, ripped right off of the ropes, and no sign of anything left behind but the top parts of the leg. Tom was baffled as he had raised it up some 4 feet off the ground, and no other animal could really have taken it down. That night, while getting ready for bed, Millie came down into the parlor and told Tom something was out messing with the barn. So he grabbed his rifle and he dashed out the front door. Sure enough, a bear or something was near the door, so he rang out a shot right near it. Only this wasn't a bear. It stood up on 2 legs and turned around and looked at Tom, let out a blood-curdling scream, and Tom let out another round, and it stuck right in the animal's top of the right leg. The animal screamed off, whimpering in pain, and that was 3 nights ago. Ever since, it keeps hanging around the house at night, screaming and hollering every few hours just to let Tom know it was still around. That was when Tom asked if I could help him put it out of its misery. The next day, I invited my brother Al to join us, and we drove up to Tom's just before dark. Tom had us bring a couple of more guns as he was determined that this was some sort of monster. Well, we had set out behind the barn looking for tracks or a path, maybe a bedding area or something of the animal, but nothing, not even a broken stick. But Tom swore on his wife's life that this thing was out here, injured and dangerous. Well, after a couple of hours of hunting around and not an unnatural sound in the woods, we decided it was time to give up, and maybe it had just moved on. We had gotten all the way back to the barn when Al heard it first, a faint scream off in the distance. Nothing that I wanted to go chasing in the dark, but then a few minutes later it was much louder and right near where we stood. All of a sudden there was more than one that we were dealing with. Tom had begged us not to leave, and Al and I were curious now. We had to see what this thing was, so we split up and decided to try and surround it. With every step I took closer, the noises I could hear it breathing. It was heavy and harder and faster, and as we closed in on its path, there was a patch of high grass. It was positive that the creature lay beyond it. So we all went in together. Tom lit up the area with a spotlight, and there, before us, was a Bigfoot the size of a teenage boy. Covered in a shaggy-looking brown coat of hair covering the entire body, the leg that Tom had shot was not in very good shape, and the animal could no longer walk. It had been laying there for some hours, as it was broken, and the back open of the wound was now bleeding out. Al raised his rifle to put it down, but there was no need, as it was apparent the animal was dying already. But everybody had forgotten the far-off scream, until it rang out some 100 yards from where we stood. We immediately turned to see where the scream had come from. When Tom lit up the area, there stood a much larger Bigfoot, screaming and panting as if it had run a very long distance, and was now moving in on where we stood near this now nearly dead and dying Sasquatch. We all got our faculties about us, and we quickly moved off from the creature. The animal had now reached where the younger one was laying, and it had already expired. We stood there and we watched as the bigger animal tossed the body across its back and began to make its way back into the forest. Tom, Al, and I stood there not knowing what to say next. As the creature walked out of our sight, we all turned and walked back to the barn. None of us said much on the way back. We weren't really sure how to feel. Finally, Tom had said thank you to both of us, and he broke the silence. Tom asked what we thought it was, and like Al, I agreed that there was no doubt that Bigfoot was real, and as any other animal in the forest. Al and I decided to drive home, and we agreed that there would be a time to talk about this night, but until then, we'd keep it between us. A few weeks later, I ran into Tom again at the market, and he looked well rested and chipper. When I asked him how he's been, he replied, sleeping like a baby, with a wink and a smile. Well, these poor fellows got more of an encounter than most. It just goes to show, don't shoot what you can't identify, or something like this could happen to you too. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.